Welcome back. It is exactly 36 minutes past the hour. We thank you for staying with the Daily Report. I told you tonight you're forgetting politics for a minute. We shall keep that aside because in town we have over 5,000 delegates who have converged to attend the 6th session of the United Nations Environment Assembly. Now, all these 5,000 delegates from the 193 member states of the United Nations will be discussing ways to mitigate climate change, the conversation on climate action. There is a lot that is happening. Last year, we saw the ACS 2023, the Africa Climate Summit. We also did see the COP28 resolutions. Before that, there was the UNEA 5, and some of the resolutions are what we are going to talk about. And to further help us have a great conversation and to unpack what has been happening today, I am delighted to be joined in studio by Gerance Mutual. He is a plastics campaigner from Greenpeace Africa to my immediate right. Thank you and welcome to our studios.
Thank you for inviting me.
Brilliant. Eliud Mutahi, a forestry expert, is on the extreme right. He joins us to be able to unpack this as well. Thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Thank you for inviting me.
Brilliant. Gerance, I gather today you are at UNEA.
Yes.
At Gigiri, to be specific.
Yeah.
Let's look at, how when we received, or rather when there was, so much hype about the UNEA 6 that was going to take place from today all through this week.
Yes.
When you landed there today, what was your first impression?
I can't say like I landed there today because we had the open-ended committee of permanent representative, which happened like precedes like the UNEA assembly. And yeah, the climate today was good. The weather was nice. The Nairobi spirit was there. A lot of delegates were streaming in, and the mood was right for the continued resolution engagement as we walk towards the assembly itself. Yes. And
what are some of the plenary sessions or events that perhaps you attended? Are you hosting a pavilion?
Today we had a reuse side event, not us as Greenpeace, but our allies, the Fiji and other states that helped to...
Fiji?
Yes, Fiji. And what we did as Greenpeace Africa, we had a press conference, and technically we were trying to link the plastics crisis with the triple planetary crisis, which is biodiversity loss, pollution, and climate change. Okay. And it really went well, and we are able to continue to push this and also campaign for global plastics treaty, a stronger one to be precise.
Indeed, that's great. Bona Eliud, the theme of this year's UNEA is effective, inclusive and sustainable multilateral actions to tackle climate change, biodiversity loss and pollution. Now, you are a forestry expert. We did see this year, rather last year, a public holiday dedicated towards planting trees, whereas growing up it was cut one tree, plant three. Are these things that perhaps, if we went back to, even as you have a goal of planting 15 billion trees, if we went back to them, would we perhaps get closer to resolving this planetary crisis?
Yes, it's a very good step that the matter is being discussed, especially at the heart of where the climate change affect mostly in the developing country. But I think inclusivity, of which the primary stakeholder, and that is the farmer or people directly involved or affected by the climate change, would gear up toward mitigating some of these things. Yeah, it's a good step. The government is doing its part, and also stakeholders need to play their part to ensure that whatever is happening, especially in the effect to the environment, we are trying to resolve this.
And the Earth is currently facing multiple environmental challenges. Eliud, I wonder, what are some of the greatest concerns that concern you?
Yeah, the greatest concern is that the person who is being affected is not really being involved in this matter.
Talk to us about that.
Yeah, what I mean is that the community that is really being affected by environment. Somebody in Isiolo, a farmer in Isiolo could not understand what is happening here in Nairobi. But if they are directly involved in this matter, I think it would be even easier to resolve some of these issues involving the climate change. Yeah.
Gerance, I'm seeing you nodding. What is some of the issues that concern you as climate change? Someone in the climate action conversation.
For me, it's the fact that people do not know that plastics comes from fossil fuels, and fossil fuel are the major or the greatest exacerbators of climate change. And the fact that 99% of plastics ever produced come from fossil fuel, that should tell you like there's something that is amiss. For us, we see plastics as that versatile or clear and easy to use, like you can just use it once and throw it away without feeling bad. But the fact that plastics come from fossil fuel, that's climate change. Number two, plastics also, if you go like 20 minutes from now to the Nairobi River, you'll find plastics on that river. So that's pollution. And I think, I'm not so sure if you've seen these, but there have been a lot of big fish in the sea that have been washed ashore. And once their bellies are popped out, you find there's plastic inside them. So as we talk about the UNEA with the theme of multilateralism and to tackle the triple planetary crisis, the conversation on plastic should not be left behind, because this is one, all other things can affect climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. But there's one thing that is constant, which is plastic. But these conversations have been left behind, and that's the reason why we are really pushing to make sure that they understand that also plastics is a crisis in itself.
So you talked about something, and we've seen on social media, a section of Kenyans saying this assembly, this summit is full of too much English. You've mentioned the triple planetary crisis.
Yes.
If you could elaborate to our viewers so that they are able to understand what we mean when you say triple planetary crisis.
In layman language, I'd say over the years, the world has faced different crises.
Yes.
Number one is climate change. If you say climate change to anyone, you'll say yeah, what is that? Basically, it's the change of weather patterns over a period of time. Number two is biodiversity loss. Biodiversity loss means the loss of the whales, the loss of birds, the forests, our pristine wetlands and water systems, the one that provide water for us. And when you talk about pollution, everyone knows pollution. There's air pollution. When you go to Dandora and find plastics be banned, that's air pollution. When you go to River Nairobi, you see the water is polluted, that is water pollution. So basically the triple planetary crisis is the climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution.
Nice.
Yes.
Thank you for that clarification, and I'm sure our viewers are now updated. They are aware of this. Bwana Eliud, he's mentioned about the forests and the wetlands, and the Wetlands Institute reports an alarming disappearance of African wetlands, comprising a substantial 1% of the continent's surface area, vanishing at a rate 3 times faster than forests. We've seen examples from the globe, other African continents. Talk to us in matters relation to Kenya. How much of wetlands perhaps are we losing?
That one could be much more, but the indicators is from what you have been seeing, and also the loss of forest that you have been seeing. As we talk of losing the wetland, also we should also address the matter of losing the forest. And I think what is going on, the people around, especially those who neighbors the forest, of which the forest contribute to what we have in the wetlands, because if we don't have a good forest, especially the indigenous, the part that the forest is supposed to be conserved, that is where the water comes from, and wetlands are developed from those areas. So the people who surrounds or who are borders the forest need to be quite aware of what is happening inside there. They also need to be involved in the activities that are going there. Because if you want to protect these areas, you should have what we call social forestry. And in social forestry, you need to involve the people who are affected directly or who benefit from those areas. Let create awareness. Let them understand. Let them understand what you build for the future generation. If you don't address from that point of angle, then the campaign that you are doing will just be useless. Yeah.
One would wonder, as a forestry expert, perhaps, would you know the forests that we planted on that day last year? How are they faring? Perhaps in your community where you were involved in, would you give us perhaps, or tell us what you saw, the numbers that came out to participate in tree planting, and how sustainable such a program is?
About the 15 billion?
Yeah, about the 15 billion. No, I'm talking about the specific, say, in your area, or when you saw that call to plant trees, did you see the sustainability in such an initiative?
Yeah, when at least you want to address issues of sustainability, and then from the point of angle on where the farmers, or what we call on-farm forestry, you are supposed to address on, is that before even you go to plant in the forest, because that is gazetted forest areas, you need to create awareness or to raise awareness on what is being planted in the farm. Is it of any use? How sustainable is it? Because even if you give a farmer some trees to go and plant and don't understand the use of those trees, it would be very difficult to manage them. So the first thing is for them to understand the use and the future use of those particular trees. Yeah.
Do you think
that's where we'll be able to address the issue of sustainability.
Do you think our population understands?
Well, to a certain level, considering the people who are involved, especially in farming, those are people who are above 60 years. But the young generation that is supposed to benefit in future are not really quite involved in issues concerning or pertaining environment. So we need to involve more of the youth, of the young people, because this is their future. Yeah.
Okay. Jerence, looking at UNEA and you being a plastics campaigner, it was an emphasis that was made especially in UNEA 3 back in 2017. Delegates, approached with a theme of towards a plastic-free, rather towards a pollution-free planet. As we progress, as we enter UNEA 6, which started today, and the previous meetings that have happened to, prepare the delegates and to further advance this conversation, do you think that perhaps there's been an insistence or adherence to the resolutions of the previous UNEA assemblies?
Yeah, I should say yes, because technically UNEA is the highest decision-making body for environmental issues. And I think the most focus goes to the most pressing environmental issues, like the things that are really affecting us at that point, at that time, and we need to get done with it. So it's more of like a priority type of selection, because like if it's something that we cannot live with for quite some long time, then that's detrimental. So yeah, there's been a lot of progress considering this is just the 6th session, and a lot of notable resolution. Like now we are discussing about the Global Plastics Treaty. We are going on the 4th discussions in Canada from April, and it's the most ambitious of them all, which is crazy because it needs to end by 2024. And yeah, so I would say, this year. And I would say like, yes, a lot of good resolutions have come out of there. Even right now, we have 19 resolutions. And if you see out of those 19 resolutions, we have like several which are really, really good. Like we can say the chemicals, sound management of chemicals, and sound management of chemicals, I should say. Then there's the synergistic approach where like now you're bringing all the multi-stakeholders together to tackle a certain problem. Then we have talks about circularity, something that people have not really known. These are some of the resolutions that have been there, they've been put on the table and they're discussing it right now. And this is the greatest, even if it cannot be put like into force right now, we believe like in future or later on, going to UNEA 7, if 2 years from now, most probably those are the ones that are going to be put on the table. So I should say in simple words like, yes, the UNEA is really working and there's good resolutions out of it. Yes.
I see you nodding, Eliud.
Yeah.
You're in agreement?
Yeah.
So
very much in agreement.
Very much in agreement. Yeah. So do you think that is the African continent fully involved in matters climate action, or does it feel like a far-fetched dream? Are we, as a continent, fully participatory, or as they call us nowadays, the global south?
Yes, somehow. Somehow they are, especially the developing country, they are being involved. Yeah. Because this really concern, especially the African country, because they are the most affected by the effect of climate change. And the matter need to be taken further, where those who are involved, especially in the assembly that is going on, they really need to be much involved, especially in decision making. I think that should happen.
And is the forestry conversation, planting trees, one that has so much emphasis? Would you think it has emphasis in these assemblies and conversations that are going on?
Yes, from the conversation, especially today, the Minister for Environment was there, and she addressed the issue as regarding to how the African country is being involved in this matter.
Yes.
And when we start talking about the global warming, Africa is the one being affected most. And in any project that is being undertaken, the people who are directly involved should be involved from when the development of project is being done, should be quite aware of what is happening. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant, brilliant. Gerance, when you look at you said one of the things that worries you is that, people are not aware that plastics come from fossils. And many developed countries still rely on oil and gas, while the rest of the developing world wants to, where the rest of the developed world wants to extinguish fossil fuels and move to renewable energy. Is the deal a little unfair for the African countries, or rather for the developing countries?
Not really. I'd say it's not really unfair.
How so?
First, I should put it like this. When you see someone running to a ditch and you follow them, very fast for you also to follow in the ditch. And right just along that canyon, you can find a bridge. Why don't you run to the bridge? So this is exactly what I want to put in place. Fossil fuel, dependence on fossil fuel has proven that, yes, you can develop, but at what cost? And at the moment, we have a lifeline, which is sustainable development, basically moving to renewable energy. Then why should we go back and just running to go and fall in the ditch of fossil fuel? And you have a lifeline, which is renewables. And we can never develop through fossil fuel. For example, in Africa, I can give, for example, in Nigeria. Yes. Nigeria is the biggest oil exporter from this continent, but the poverty level over there is unimaginable. So unless something else happened, you can never, in global south, you can never kind of grow with the economy of fossil fuel. But we can be pioneers of sustainable development by embracing, we have the greatest potential to have renewable energy in solar, in wind, in hydroelectric For example, even in Kenya itself, we are kind of fully into hydroelectric energy, and this should be the way to go. And as my friend here said, protection of the catchment areas where we get that water for the hydroelectric, protection of these forests that changes, makes the climate to be favorable. That is the way to go. And definitely we cannot allow ourselves to follow the lead of something that we've already seen that cannot be sustainable and follow other sustainable way. So we can be pioneers as Africans. Yes.
Jorens, you mean as a plastics campaigner, of course you're aware of the feedback that comes from especially world leaders of the global south. They say, fine, some of these measures are being introduced perhaps way late in the day.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, what do you want, or rather what do you think should happen to the population? Because they say it creates a lot of jobs, it creates a lot of, there is a lot of money being involved in the economy or being circulated in the economy. Are the alternatives as lucrative as the current measures or the current way of doing it?
Yes, it is. Like you can think about the refill and reuse system. How many young people have been employed by just the refill and reuse system? I can even see in your studio, you have like the refill system.
Yes.
Why didn't you guys go and buy like cartons of plastics, but you just decided to have a refill and reuse system that have a dispenser, and you can just go there with your glass, which is reused. You can reuse this so many times, just wash it. So it creates jobs. And this is the fallacy of it. When you talk about, if you see the plastics chain,
yes,
almost all of it is automated. So when you say like it's creating job, I'm like, how does it create job per se? Except for those who are selling. And after you're selling, which is like the end part of this production process and manufacturing process. So when you go to the refill and reuse system, there's much more potential that you can have in creating jobs and creating a better economy, and also for our health, because even if you can afford to buy plastics water bottle, but the microplastics in them, and I should put this maybe on air,
yes,
there are over 13,000 chemicals that are used to make plastics. So in these 13,000, like 6,000 of them are detrimental. You can say this was researched by IPEN. I'll share that later on.
Yes, yes.
So these things, when you put it together, like the true cost of plastics is even greater than you having it as a lifeline and saying that it's creating employment. Yes.
Oh, brilliant. Eliud, last year was classified as the hottest.
Yes.
We did see the numbers and the issues that came about. It was hottest on record, bringing more intense storms, droughts, and wildfires. What is the warning to the humanity?
Yeah, there is the framework, especially on the United Nations,
Yes.
UFCCCM, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, that stipulates if the temperature or global warming keeps on increasing, it will be detrimental. And if the ceiling, that is 1.5 degrees centigrade, goes beyond, it will be worse. Like now what we are experiencing extreme temperatures. See? Sometimes it's very cold, sometimes it's very hot. That are just some of the signs to indicate that the group, the direction that we are heading is not bright for the future generation. And we are supposed to take action. And this action is to reduce the greenhouse gases. And all these conventions, they are geared toward reducing the emission. And if each and every one of us take that responsibility, I think we will not go toward that level where the temperatures are expected to go beyond 1.5 degrees centigrade. And that's what we should be very careful. And every person should take that responsibility. Yes, there are those treaties, there are the Paris Agreement,
Yes.
there are the Kyoto Protocol, there was the Earth Summit, and then in Kenya we have the Climate Change Amendment Bill of 2023. We also have the Carbon Trading and Sharing Benefits of 2023. And there was also the Sharing of National Resources Amendment Bill of 2022. So those frameworks should guide the communities, the people. We don't want to have that crisis between the human and the nature.
Oh, brilliant.
We don't want to go there. Yeah.
And, well, we don't need to go there, but for now, let's take a break. When we come back, as you deliberate and ponder on what we are talking about here in studio, we want to take a short commercial break. When we come back, we continue to look at matters circularity, what to look forward to in the future. We are in 2024. There are deadlines that need to be met, by some years, some by 2030, and other timelines. So that and much more is coming your way right here on the Daily Report. We are taking a short break. Keep your feedback coming, especially regarding this important conversation that concerns you. We're back in a few minutes.
Na safari hii katika Mfahamu Kiongozi tutakuletea viongozi aina mbalimbali.
Nikuwe na Nisani kama 10 na pia nikuwe menua minibus. Minibus niko niwa.
Kushinda unaangalia simu ya mzee. Soma Biblia ama ingia kwa washroom ujisugue. Mpaka nimetoa hivi.
I don't know whether any of my children would want to get into the political field. Sijajua bado.
Kila Alhamisi saa 1:30 kuendelea.
Join us on a journey through the concrete jungles and rising skylines, where every beam, every nail tells a story of progress and vision.
In every aspect of life, you have to look at several dynamics.
From groundbreaking,
Nowadays with the tech, you can check on different websites or you check online and you can see some inspiration. So at least that one would be a direction already. I'll know like what kind of style you're going for.
to finishing touches, witness the dedication of the hard-working teams who bring these ambitious dreams to reality. The Realtor, Tuesdays at 6:30 p.m.
Rather 5 minutes past the hour. We thank you for staying with the Daily Report tonight as we look at as an issue that concerns you. UNEA 6, adaptability and sustainability. Over 5,000 delegates have converged right here in Nairobi for that important assembly. But even as we continue to discuss this conversation with my guests who are still here in studio, thank you, gentlemen, for staying with us. Eliud Mutahi on my far right, he is a forestry expert, and on my immediate right is Gerans Mutual, plastics campaigner at Greenpeace Africa. Thank you, gentlemen, for still staying with us. And some developing story I'm sure you've seen. The Kenya Met, the Meteorological Department, has warned of heavy rainfall with potential floods until Thursday, the 29th of February. And it says 27 counties are likely to be affected, including Nairobi, Kiambu, Bomet, Kisii, Marsabit, and Machakos. When coming back to you, Eliud, earlier on, as you were talking about the issue that you need to see is a conversation on all these warnings that we seem to be seeing all the time, and we seem to be getting caught off guard sometimes. Do you think that the approach should be different even as we accelerate the conversation on climate action? Do you think that there is something perhaps you can be like, okay, while we are taking 10 steps on this one, on this other issue, we can take 100, 150 steps?
Yeah, I think the conversation can be, well, like what we do in Africa Harvest. Yes. Because this is a matter that really affects the community. Mm-hmm. And especially the small-scale farm holders. Mm-hmm. The strategy could be changed and involved directly, because these are some of the boardroom meeting, I would call them, involve directly the primary stakeholder. And in that matter, I think we'll be able to address some of these challenges. Because when you talk about environment, well, and when you go deeper and talk about, because environment, when we are talking about pre-industrial, we didn't have some of these challenges. Then after industrialization, yes, that when we are seeing these challenges. And who is most affected by this development is that farmer in Isiolo, in Marsabit. We have seen crop failure, we have seen animal dying, we have seen increased food insecurity. And you cannot talk about agriculture if you are not addressing the issue of environment. So these two things go together. I really need to be addressed. We have a different strategy. Like when you talk about agriculture, and most of the staple food here is maize. Can farmers awareness be created where they are able to see other opportunity rather than maize? My friend here talked about issues and problems surrounding the plastics. We have crop residues after planting. Can there be innovations that when you have these crop residues can be converted to bioplastics? Those are some of the things that we need to address. And those are some of the areas that jobs can be created for the youth. Yeah.
Brilliant. Gerance, let's talk about this issue on especially finance framework. And the world is looking towards a green transition, and an estimated $700 billion will be required to develop green energy in Africa alone, and yet it received only 2% of the $2.8 trillion invested globally in renewables between 2000 and 2020. We are also globally, the statistics show that Africa is contributing only 4% of emissions globally. When you look at the disparities in the finance framework, what exactly is going on? As the Gen Z will tell you, why is the math not mathing?
I wouldn't say like I'm a Gen Z myself, but most probably I'm there. Technically, when you talk about finance mechanism, yes, it depends on whose interest is in these finance mechanism. But because most of the time the finance mechanism takes the it's not good to use these words in Kenya, but yeah, like up, down, top-down approach. But you need to make sure, the words you want to use. Make sure that this approach in terms of mechanism takes the bottom-up type of approach.
Yes.
In such a way that like now this money is brought to the communities, the ones that are really affected, the ones who really have innovations, because technically like the world is moving to ecological agriculture.
Yes.
You wonder like why it's really expensive for you to eat organic food, and you're like somewhere down in Isiolo, as he said, they're eating organic food every day. So why don't you just go and put scale up this ecological farming back at these communities.
Yes.
The same thing with plastics. Oil is really subsidized, like very, very deeply subsidized. But when you come to subsidization of like solutions like solar, like wind and hydroelectric, you find like the investments do not go there. So basically they're investing in the wrong path. And I should tell like all the investors who are listening to us this today, they should invest to the future, which is renewable energy and a just transition for our workers and also the people who work in these industries. Yes.
When you talk about renewable energy, there are still policies that hinder, before you go back to Eliud, there are still policies that hinder these, green development, green energy conversation. For instance, there is a regulation on the amount, or rather the number of solar powered panels or energy levels that you can have, rather, solar panels that can produce certain levels of energy in Nairobi alone. You cannot produce to a certain industrial extent. Do you think that we also need to look at those policies that, as Africa, we seem to have policies that are detrimental to ourselves?
Yeah, I would say like yes. As much as like you have frameworks and policies that are in place, those policies and frameworks should work for the people, should work and should make sense to the local mwananchi. So definitely the frameworks needs to, as he said like before, like you should involve the community from down and make sure that they understand this and this is happening. And once you make these policies, that's the reason we have the public participation. And if we miss the public participation part, that's why we go ahead and make laws that do not make sense to our communities. So you say like when it comes to frameworks and creating laws and policies, should first start from local mwananchi. Yes.
Okay, brilliant. We'll be coming back to look at, are we working on the figure on this climate financing framework? The the figures that perhaps as a continent we need to come to. But Eliud, there is a conversation, an issue that sometimes is mentioned nowadays, and Kenyans just sometimes wonder. There is the issue of carbon credits. First of all, what exactly is that? And number two, there seems to be funding and money around it, but people actually do not understand this whole conversation of carbon credits. What is it exactly about?
Well, most of the people do not understand the conversation about the carbon credit.
Yes.
Although the views are out there to guide. And when you talk about the carbon credits, those are amount of carbon that has already been sequestered. There is what we call carbon emission reduction. There are a lot of greenhouse gases that are emitted in the environment. And that is what is causing the rising temperatures. And that's why we were talking about if the ceilings go beyond 1.5, it would be detrimental. And to do this, we need to reduce the amount of carbon that is in the environment. And other, the treaties that have been set, by 2050, the carbon emission reduction is supposed to be zero. That is, for those who have done economics, they know about balance sheets. It should balance between the amount of carbon that is released in the atmosphere and the amount of carbon that is absorbed by either the plants. What the carbon credit means is that amount of carbon, and is calculated in tonnage. 1 ton of carbon equals to 1 credit. Are you getting me?
Yes.
1 ton of carbon equals to 1 credit. And then the amount of carbon that is sequestered equals now to the number of credits that is available, probably for sales. But for now, because the carbon projects are at the preliminary stage, even in a Kenyan law, the framework that has been set is not already passed in the parliament. So we are waiting for the development about the bills that are waiting the parliament approval. But for now, we cannot talk about how much a credit was, because it's like the stock market.
Yes.
There is sometimes the prices would go up, sometimes down. There is that variance, and we cannot talk about the amount that can be sold at this particular time. But what really people need to note is development of carbon credit takes time. And in Africa Harvest, we are involved in a project on land restoration, livelihood, and carbon with other partners. And before the carbon stream or the income, of which it takes about 5 to 6 years, the farmers need to have something in the pocket, because we need that time until the tree is mature enough to start producing those credits or to start sequestering the carbon. Yeah.
So is it something that perhaps as a country will be able to reap benefits from, whereas we don't even have a framework yet?
Yeah, the stage has already been set.
Okay.
There are those project proponents, there are projects ongoing with the regulation that was sent. If we are in an international treaty, there are those regulations, especially the Paris Agreement, Article 6. There are those regulations for those who are involved in development of carbon project at this particular type. They are the regulation. We have 2 types of carbon. We have the voluntary carbon, and we have regulated carbon. The voluntary carbon, anybody could be involved in this project. But the regulated carbon is what we call cap and tax. There is that amount of carbon that you are supposed to emit in the air, in the environment. When you exceed that, then you either transfer to somebody who is sequestering that carbon or meet the cost of emitting. Yeah.
So, Gerans, we did see at COP28 is when there was the full official launch of the funding and the the official funding model and the framework of it all that was agreed upon in COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt. Come Dubai, or rather the UAE, is when we, finally launched it. Do you think that it is time that we are specific as a universe, as a world, that indeed these are the monies and the figures that we're looking at, and this is how it should be shared, especially to the global south, the African countries?
You're talking about the loss and damage?
Yes, the loss and damage.
I'd love to shy away from that topic for now, because I don't have much more details on it, and the frameworks are not really put in place. Yeah, so I would shy away from talking.
But do you think that perhaps the framework needs to be needs to be put in place urgently?
Yes, definitely, because we've seen a lot of environmental damages that are happening in the global south, from flooding to drought, to the heat waves, and also health challenges. So I believe, and when you go to the hospital, you not pay by telling the doctor stories, you need to pay using money. And when you're talking about building your house, you don't build your house from telling the plumber, yeah, fix that thing. You're supposed to pay the money. So I feel like, yeah, on the loss and damage.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. But then the plastics conversation, do you think that perhaps we need to move away from, as a country, we've quote unquote succeeded in the plastic bags. By the way, how is that still going on? Because we still have, when you look at the trash cans, the trash materials that are used to dispose of waste, there are some that are still made out of plastic. Are we seeing these plastics coming back in a different form?
Yeah, and that's the reason we need a strong global plastics treaty. We've banned plastics in Kenya, but our neighbor in Uganda, they have not banned plastics. And plastics does not know any border. As much as, like, yes, if you don't get like virgin plastics or clear plastics, the rivers that connects our countries, like Victoria, which is shared within so many countries, definitely plastics will reach us. So that's the reason why we need a stronger global plastics treaty that will make sure that all the countries, because this is an international law, and these international laws are supposed to be implemented in the nations.
Yes.
Yeah, you see, like for Rwanda, they started this conversation, and now Kenya joined in. Now Nigeria, of all the countries, just a few months ago, also banned styrofoam. That's a greater step, but now we need something because the plastics pollution is like very, very big. So we need an ambitious type of also treaty or a law that will end the age of plastics from its production to its disposal. Let's not talk about disposal only. Yes.
Yeah, Eliud, especially looking at how the world, or rather Kenya, is socialized right now, a good number of people are found in the urban centers, and they would be wondering, okay, fine, where do I plant a tree? Where do I ensure that I, create a shade for someone or for themselves? What would be your word to them?
Yes, there are so many places to plant tree, even those people who are in urban areas. We have schools, we have public schools, we have public places, we have nearby forest. Like here in Nairobi, we have Karura, we have Gong Forest. So there are so many people, there are so many areas where you can plant trees. But if you don't have that, maybe the timing, you can also support through other organizations, especially people who are involved in matters of tree planting. You can just visit Karura here. You can just visit your nearby forest station, chief's camp. So planting trees, there are so many opportunities. If you are at least concerned with the environment, you can just support. You can just support a club in a school. Yeah.
Okay. Gerance, the conversation on multilateralism is one that's still beginning to sound a little bit complex, if you could call it. But in a nutshell, what are you talking about when you talk about multilateralism? Shared multilateralism.
Basically, cooperation in real, like in simple words. Coming together, facing, we know that you are facing this environmental issue. How can we pull resources? How can we pull the scientific knowledge? How can we pull innovations? How can we pull solutions to these environmental issues without patenting them, without putting obstacles that are there, and making sure that these information and these solutions reach to all the people, whether you're affected or not, like it reaches all of you guys. So when you see, like, for example, when you talk about multilateralism, everyone has their own interest. Like Kenya has their own interest, South Sudan has their own interest. But now how do we put down our interest and now think as a collective and move together to find a solution to the environmental crisis, which is now like the triple planetary crisis. Like right now, at this moment in time, we are faced by climate change, we are faced by biodiversity loss, and we are faced by pollution. So how do we put our interest down and put our focus, lesser focus, to make sure that we achieve or we eliminate this crisis that is facing us? And I think we saw that during the COVID period. Like, yeah, all countries are like, yes, I think we need to put this thing onto halt. And now we get vaccines, as much as it was not really very well distributed or something of sort. But like, these things were put into place. And that is now an example of multilateralism, cooperation to make sure that we alleviate these risks that are ahead of us.
Yeah, what is the contribution of Greenpeace Africa to this conversation? What exactly do you guys do?
Greenpeace Africa, or Greenpeace, which is like an national regional I should put this, it's an environmental campaigning organization.
Yes.
So we have different national and regional offices. Here in Africa, we're in 5 countries. And what we do exactly is we campaign on these environmental issues. We also do research and document this research to help policymakers, because we have now the policy science panel where policy and science are put together to create environmental laws that are sound. And yes, we also we have a supporter base. We inform our supporters and we collect, like I should say, leverage on people's power, because we have like supporters who help us and who understand this detrimental crisis. We have volunteers who help us to do these activities, and from this community we are able to change the world one time, like one step at a time.
One step at a time.
Yes.
Elliot, talk to us about the contribution of Africa Harvest to forestry, and what exactly as an organization you are propagating for.
Yes, in Africa Harvest we advance agricultural technologies that improve on food security and also on marketing. But you cannot talk agriculture without touching forest or environment or climate change, because they relate. We want these small scale farm holders to become resilient with the changing climate. Yes.
Brilliant. Let's get to the closing remarks because we are running out of time. I'll begin with you, Eliud. What are some of the things that you want to see post today, post having this conversation, post UNEA 6, as we move into 2025? What are some of the things that, as a forestry expert, you want to see happen in this country?
Well, yes, the discussion is very good. And what is going on at the UNEP, promises has been made, especially on climate change, and really what we expect and anticipate is the commitment that has been made to reduce at least to reduce the greenhouse gases. Let the people who are involved, especially the primary stakeholders, be involved in decision making. And I think that is my greatest expectation on the conference that is going on and the ones that will come in the future.
Brilliant. Jerence, you get the last word.
Thank you. First, thank you for inviting us to your studio. Beautiful studio for sure.
Thank you.
And on my side, I should say, like, because the theme is multilateralism, I really foreseeing countries coming together, working in one accord to make sure that we elevate these environmental crises that are happening to us, for us to have a livable future, a greener and a cleaner future. Yes. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us for this conversation. UNEA 6 Adaptability and Sustainability, and we believe that you have now been informed on what to expect out of this important conference, this important environment assembly. And even as we move forward, you will be able to participate as well as do the little things, because in the words of Professor Wangari Maathai the late, it is the little things humans do that make a difference. I've been speaking to Eliud Mutahi, a forestry expert on my extreme right, forestry expert at Africa Harvest. Thank you so much, Eliud, for joining us. And on my immediate right has been Jerence Mutwol, plastics campaigner at Greenpeace Africa. We thank you for your time and company right here on the Daily Report, as well as your feedback. But we are short of time, but the conversation continues online. My name is George Maringa. As always, stay safe and be kind to one another. I'll see you tomorrow night on the People's Court. Good night from Nairobi.
Na safari hii katika Mfahamu Kiongozi tutakuletea viongozi aina mbalimbali.
Nikuwe na Nisani kama 10 na pia nikuwe menua minibus. Minibus nikoniwa.